The prayer in the snow, the first snowfall of December, arrived on a Tuesday evening, dusting the sidewalks of Greenwich with a fine layer of white powder. Marcus Reynolds stood at the floor-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, watching the flakes drift past like tiny ghosts. At 42, he had everything most people dreamed of: wealth beyond measure, a collection of luxury cars, properties scattered across 3 continents. Yet tonight, like every night, he would return to an empty mansion where silence echoed through marble hallways. Marcus had built his empire from nothing. 20 years of relentless work, sacrificing friendships, relationships, and any semblance of a personal life. His days blurred together in an endless stream of meetings, negotiations, and deals. He couldn't remember the last time he'd had a real conversation with someone who wasn't trying to sell him something or ask for money. The clock on his desk showed 7:30. His assistant had left hours ago, and the building was nearly empty. Marcus grabbed his coat and headed for the elevator, his footsteps echoing in the deserted corridor. Outside, the cold air bit at his face. He adjusted his scarf and began the short walk to where his driver waited. Marcus preferred this brief moment of solitude between work and home, even on cold winter nights. That's when he heard it. A small voice, barely audible above the soft whisper of falling snow. "Please, please don't let my mom die." Marcus stopped mid-stride. The words were so quiet, so fragile, they might have been carried on the wind itself. He turned slowly, scanning the darkening street. There, huddled against the iron fence of a townhouse, sat a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 4 years old. Her blonde hair was pulled into pigtails, and she clutched a worn stuffed rabbit against her chest. She wore a thin pink dress beneath a beige cardigan, completely inadequate for the freezing temperature. Her eyes were closed, her small hands pressed together in prayer. "Please, God," she whispered again, her breath forming tiny clouds in the frigid air. "Please don't let my mom die. I'll be so good. I promise." Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. He approached slowly, not wanting to startle her. As he got closer, he could see she was shivering, her lips tinged with blue. "Hello there," he said softly, kneeling down to her level. The little girl's eyes flew open. They were large and hazel, brimming with tears. She looked at him with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. "Are you lost?" Marcus asked gently. "Where are your parents?" "Inside," the girl whispered, pointing at the townhouse behind her. "With Mommy. She's sleeping and won't wake up. Daddy's crying." Marcus's heart began to pound. "How long have you been out here?" "I don't know." Her lower lip trembled. "Daddy told me to wait outside while the ambulance comes, but I got scared and came out here to pray, like Mommy taught me." Marcus stood immediately, his business instincts kicking in. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Emma," she said quietly. "Emma, I'm Marcus. Can you show me which house is yours?" Emma nodded and pointed to the townhouse directly behind them. Marcus could now see the front door was slightly ajar, and he heard the faint sound of someone sobbing inside. "Stay right here for just one moment, okay?" Marcus said. He pulled off his coat and wrapped it around Emma's tiny shoulders. It engulfed her completely, but at least it would provide some warmth. Marcus approached the door and knocked firmly. "Hello, is anyone there? I found a little girl outside." "Emma." The sobbing stopped. Footsteps rushed toward the door, and it swung open to reveal a man in his 30s with red-rimmed eyes and disheveled hair. "Emma," the man gasped. "Oh God, Emma, I told you to stay in the living room." He looked past Marcus and saw his daughter against the fence, still wrapped in prayer and in Marcus's expensive coat. "I'm sorry," Marcus said quickly. "I found her outside. She said something about her mother, Sarah." The man said, his voice breaking. "My wife, she collapsed an hour ago. The ambulance is on its way, but the snow is slowing everything down. I turned my back for 1 minute, and Emma must have slipped out." As if on cue, the sound of sirens cut through the quiet evening. An ambulance turned onto the street, its lights painting the snow in shades of red and blue. The next hour passed in a blur. Paramedics rushed inside while Marcus stayed with Emma and her father, James, on the sidewalk. Emma clung to her father's leg, still clutching her stuffed rabbit, still wearing Marcus's coat. "She has a heart condition," James explained, his voice hollow. "Sarah's been managing it for years, but tonight something went wrong." Marcus made a decision in that moment that would change everything. "Which hospital are they taking her to?" he asked. "St. Mary's," James said, watching as the paramedics brought out a stretcher carrying his unconscious wife. "I'm coming with you," Marcus said firmly, "and I'm calling ahead to make sure she has the best cardiac specialists available." James looked at him with confusion and gratitude. I can't afford." "You don't need to," Marcus interrupted. "Just focus on your family." At the hospital, Marcus made call after call. He used every connection he had, pulling strings he'd accumulated over decades in business. Within an hour, Sarah had been transferred to a private room with the hospital's top cardiologist examining her. Emma sat in the waiting room, still wrapped in Marcus's coat, her stuffed rabbit on her lap. Marcus sat beside her, feeling awkward but strangely compelled to stay. "Is Mommy going to be okay?" Emma asked, looking up at him with those huge hazel eyes. "The doctors are doing everything they can," Marcus said honestly. "They're very good at what they do." "Did God hear my prayer?" Emma whispered. Marcus paused. He'd never been a religious man. Faith seemed like a luxury he'd never had time for. But looking at this tiny girl who had knelt in the snow, praying with absolute conviction, he found himself saying, "I think he did. I think that's why I was walking down your street tonight." Emma smiled for the first time, a small but genuine expression of hope. Hours later, as dawn began to break over the city, the cardiologist emerged with good news. Sarah had stabilized. She would need surgery eventually, but she was going to survive. James broke down in tears of relief. Emma ran to her father, and they held each other tightly. Marcus stood to leave, feeling satisfied but still somehow empty. He'd done a good thing, but soon he would return to his silent mansion, to his solitary existence. "Wait," Emma called out. She ran to Marcus and wrapped her small arms around his legs. "Thank you for finding me. Thank you for helping Mommy." Marcus felt tears sting his eyes for the first time in years. He knelt down and hugged Emma back, carefully, as if she might break. "Thank you, Emma," he whispered, "for reminding me what really matters." Over the following weeks, Marcus became a regular visitor to the hospital, then to the modest townhouse where the family lived. He covered Sarah's medical expenses and formed an unlikely friendship with James, who worked as a schoolteacher. But more than that, he became a part of their lives, attending Emma's preschool Christmas play, sharing meals at their crowded kitchen table, reading bedtime stories in a worn rocking chair. On Christmas Eve, Marcus sat in that same living room where months ago he had found a family in crisis. Now Sarah was recovering well, seated beside her husband on the couch. Emma sat on Marcus's lap, showing him her new coloring book. "You know," Sarah said softly, "Emma's prayer that night saved more than just me." Marcus looked up, confused. "It saved you too," James added with a knowing smile. Marcus glanced down at Emma, who was humming a Christmas carol while carefully coloring Santa's suit. He thought about his empty penthouse, gathering dust now because he preferred spending time here, in this warm, chaotic, love-filled home. Yes, Marcus said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. I suppose it did. Outside, snow began to fall again, blanketing the city in white. But inside, surrounded by people who had somehow become his family, Marcus Reynolds finally understood what it meant to be truly rich.